Narrator, we all know the story. April 26th, 1986. A city of dreams, built for the workers of the future, suddenly silenced. The name Chernobyl has become synonymous with invisible danger, a ghost story written in radiation and decay. But most people see it from a distance, a day trip, a guided tour, a few haunting photographs. We wanted more. My friends Mark, Liam, and I, we're urban explorers. We've been in forgotten asylums, derelict factories, but Chernobyl was the ultimate goal. And we weren't interested in a sanitized tour. We wanted to feel the weight of the place. We decided to do the unthinkable, the forbidden. We would spend a night inside the most infamous building in Pripyat, the Central Hospital, specifically in the basement where the first firefighters were treated. This is the story of that night. A night where the line between history and nightmare blurred into nothing.
The smell hit us first. It's a smell unique to Chernobyl, a cocktail of damp plaster, rotting wood, mold, and something else, something metallic, almost coppery, like old blood and rust. We switched on our headlamps, and the beams cut through a profound darkness that seemed to swallow the light. We were in a storage room. Old glass bottles, stained brown, lined the shelves. A child's tiny shoe lay in the corner, covered in dust. It was a gut punch. This wasn't just an abandoned building. It was a museum of interrupted lives. Our goal was the main treatment area in the basement, the triage zone for the first responders. We navigated corridors littered with debris, fallen ceiling tiles, pages from medical textbooks fluttering in the slight draft from our entrance. Our dosimeters chirped intermittently, a constant reminder of the invisible poison saturating this place. The radiation was higher here, hot spots where dust from the reactor had settled decades ago. We found a staircase leading down. The air grew colder, damper. The walls were stained with dark, ominous patches of mold that looked disturbingly like silhouettes. Every door we passed was ajar, revealing glimpses of a frozen hell. An operating theater with tools still laid out, a patient room with beds stripped bare, a pharmacy with shattered vials on the floor. And then we found it. The main basement ward. It was a large, open space. Metal gurneys were lined up in rows, some with stained, rotting mattresses. For stands stood like silent sentinels. But the most chilling things were the objects left behind. On a small table near the entrance, there was a pile of leather boots. The firefighters' boots. They were large, heavy, and caked in a dark, gritty substance. Our Geiger counter-screamed as we pointed it at them. These boots had walked through the heart of hell. "This is it," Mark whispered, his voice trembling. "This is where they brought them." We set up our base camp in a smaller side room that might have been an office, far enough from the boots to have slightly lower radiation, but with a clear view of the main ward. We positioned cameras on tripods, their red recording lights the only points of color in the monochrome decay. The first few hours were tense, but quiet. We talked in hushed tones, ate some protein bars, and reviewed the camera feeds. The night vision footage was a study in green and black, every shadow a potential threat. It was around 1 a.m. when things started to change. It began with sounds. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. The sound of dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the concrete floor above us. We all fell silent, straining to listen. "You hear that?" Liam asked, his face pale in the glow of the camera screen. "Probably just an animal," Mark said, trying to sound confident. "A rat, or maybe a dog from the zone." But it didn't sound like an animal. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. Drag, pause. Then it stopped, and was replaced by another sound. A soft, wet cough. It came from the darkness of the main ward, just beyond our doorway. My blood ran cold. We shone our lights into the ward. Nothing. The gurneys stood empty. The cough came again, closer this time, followed by a low moan. It was the sound of someone in immense, unimaginable pain. Liam grabbed a camera and pointed it into the darkness. "Is someone there?" he called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. Silence. Then, from a camera speaker, we heard a whisper. It was faint, distorted, but clear. "Voda." Water. None of us spoke Russian, but we knew that word. We had read the accounts. The firefighters, suffering from acute radiation sickness, were constantly begging for water. Their throats were burning, their bodies dehydrating from the inside out. The rational part of my brain screamed that it was the wind, our imagination, a trick of the acoustics. But the primal, fearful part knew we were not alone. The atmosphere had shifted. The air felt thick, heavy with sorrow and agony. Over the next hour, the phenomena escalated. The shadows in the main ward began to move. Not just flickers from our lamps, but distinct, human-shaped shadows that would dart between the gurneys. On the night vision camera, we saw a tall, dark figure standing at the far end of the room, just watching us. When Mark swung a powerful spotlight towards it, there was nothing there. Then the temperature dropped suddenly. Our breath misted in the beams of our headlamps. The cold was biting, unnatural, and with the cold came the smells. The stale odor of decay was overpowered by a new, horrific scent, the smell of burnt flesh and hair. It was so strong it made us gag. We huddled together in the office, too terrified to venture out. Our cameras kept recording. One of them, pointed at the pile of boots, captured something that still haunts me. A single boot on the top of the pile twitched. Then, as if worn by an invisible foot, it tilted upright, stood for a moment, and then fell over. It wasn't a rodent. It was too deliberate. The whispers started again, this time a chorus of them. Muddled, pained voices overlapping. Ballet. It hurts. Manga. Pomogi. Help me. We were witnessing a recording. Not on tape, but on the very fabric of the building itself. The immense trauma, the pain and terror of those final hours had been seared into these walls, replaying for anyone foolish enough to listen in the dark. The climax came around 3:30 a.m. The activity had reached a fever pitch. Shadows were moving constantly. The whispers were now angry, pleading cries, and the feeling of being watched was unbearable. We decided we had to leave. It was no longer about the video. It was about survival. As we started frantically packing our gear, the door to our office, the heavy wooden door we had propped open, slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. We were trapped. Mark rushed to the door and pulled on the handle. It wouldn't budge. It was as if something immense was holding it shut from the other side. He started pounding on it, yelling for help, knowing full well no one could hear us. That's when we saw it through the small, grimy window in the door. A figure. It was tall, wearing what looked like a heavy, contaminated firefighter's coat. Its face was in shadow, but from its posture, it seemed to be leaning against the door, holding it closed. But the most terrifying detail was the glow. A faint, sickly, greenish-yellow light seemed to emanate from within the coat, illuminating the outline of the figure, the ghostly echo of a man still burning with radiation. Liam, in a state of pure panic, raised his camera and flashed a photo. The bright LED flash illuminated the corridor for a split second. In that flash, we didn't see a man. We saw a horrific blurred silhouette, and for a moment, a face or what was left of it. The skin was blistered and peeling. The eyes were wide with pain and confusion. It was a vision of pure agony. The moment the flash died, the pounding on the door started. But it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside our room, from the walls. A frantic, desperate banging, like dozens of trapped hands trying to break through the plaster. We screamed. We threw our bodies against the door. And suddenly, it flew open, sending us stumbling into the main ward. We didn't look back. We scrambled, tripping over debris, our hearts hammering against our ribs. We didn't stop running until we were out of the hospital, out of Pripyat, and halfway back to the relative safety of the outer zone, collapsing in the cold light of dawn. We made it out. We were caught by the zone authorities, fined, and banned for life. A small price to pay. We reviewed the footage. Most of the audio was a mess of static and our own panicked breathing. The shadows on the night vision were ambiguous, easily dismissed by a skeptic. But there was one piece of evidence we could never explain: the photo Liam took. In the photo, the corridor is empty. There is no figure, but the door to our office is visibly distorted, warped outward as if by a tremendous force. And in the center of the door, burned into the wood as if by a tremendous heat, is the perfect, clear outline of a human hand. We didn't just spend a night in an abandoned building. We spent a night in a tomb, a wound in the earth that has never healed. The ghosts of Chernobyl aren't just spirits. They are echoes of a catastrophe, memories of pain so intense they refuse to fade. The hospital doesn't just hold the ghosts of the firefighters. It is the ghost, a monument forever dying, forever begging for water that will never come. And sometimes in the dead of night, I can still hear the dragging sound and the whisper, Voda. Thank you all for watching. I would be very grateful if you subscribe to the channel and put a like and comment.